The sky above New Seoul was filled with lights. Ships from 12 different worlds floated above the city, their colorful hulls shining in the evening sun. It was a celebration 10 years in the making. Earth had spent a decade as an observer member of the Galactic Council. And tonight, the whole planet was celebrating. President Yoon Sera stood at the podium inside the United Nations building. Behind her, a massive screen showed the flags of every nation on Earth, united under one symbol. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 8 billion people. 10 years ago, we learned we were not alone, she said. The crowd fell silent. The Galactic Council found us. They offered us friendship. They offered us guidance. They promised that one day we would stand beside them as equals. The audience clapped. Diplomats from across Earth smiled and nodded. In the front row, Ambassador Talek, the Council's representative to Earth, showed his sharp teeth, and what humans had learned was a smile. We have learned so much, President Yoon continued. New medicines, new energy, new hope. And soon, very soon, we will take our rightful place among the stars. The applause grew louder. People cheered. Outside, fireworks exploded over every major city on Earth. But not everyone was celebrating. Admiral Kang Doan watched the speech from a military base in the mountains of Korea. He was a tall man with a hard face and eyes that had seen too much war. He had fought in Earth's last great conflict 20 years ago, before the aliens came. He knew what enemies looked like, and something about the Council had always bothered him. They smiled too much, he said quietly. His aide, a young officer named Park Jinu, looked at him with confusion. Sir, the Council? They smile too much. They promise too much. In my experience, when someone gives you everything you want, they are planning to take something you cannot afford to lose. Park Jinu did not know what to say. The Admiral was famous for his dark moods. But he was also famous for being right, far away, on the red surface of Mars. Dr. Han Yuri was not watching the celebration at all. She was working. Yuri was a scientist at the Joint Science Initiative, a facility where humans and council advisors worked together on new technology. She was young, barely 30, with messy hair and glasses that were always dirty. She loved her work, but lately something had been bothering her. She held a small device in her hand. It was a medical scanner, a gift from the Council 5 years ago. It could detect diseases, heal wounds, and save lives. It was supposed to be advanced technology, centuries ahead of anything humans could build, but Yuri had found something strange. 3 months ago, a farmer in Argentina had found a piece of metal in his field. It was part of an alien ship that had crashed on Earth long before the Council made contact. The military had taken it to Yuri for study. The technology inside that old, broken piece of metal was better than anything the Council had given them. This doesn't make sense, Yuri whispered to herself. She compared the scanner to the crash technology. The difference was clear. The Council was giving humanity old, weak technology while pretending it was the best they had. Why would they do that? On the moon? Inside the Council's embassy? Lieutenant Beek Sora was asking herself the same question. Sora was an intelligence officer. Officially, she worked as a translator at the embassy. Unofficially, she was a spy. Her job was to watch the Council and report anything suspicious to Earth's military. Tonight, while everyone celebrated, Sora was doing her real job. She sat in a small room filled with computers. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. She had found something strange in the embassy's communication logs. A signal had been sent from Ambassador Talek's private office to the Council homeworld. The signal was encrypted with military codes, not diplomatic ones. Why would a diplomat use military encryption? Sora tried to decode the message, but it was too complex. She copied the signal and hid it in her personal files. She would send it to Admiral Kang in the morning, but she had a bad feeling. A very bad feeling. The next day, Ambassador Talek requested a meeting with President Yoon Sera. The whole world watched as he walked into her office with a smile on his strange, gray face. I bring wonderful news, he said. His voice was smooth like honey. The Council has decided The vote for Earth's full membership will happen within 1 year. President Yoon Sira felt tears in her eyes. This is everything we hoped for. You have proven yourselves, Talek said. Humanity is ready. Soon, you will have access to all our technology, all our knowledge. You will be true members of the galactic family. The news spread across Earth like fire. People danced in the streets. Children dreamed of flying to distant stars. Leaders made speeches about a bright future. Admiral Kang Don heard the news in his office. He did not smile. Instead, he opened a secret file on his computer. Inside were reports from Lieutenant Beak Sora. Strange signals. Hidden messages. Technology that did not match what the council claimed. Something is wrong, he said to the empty room. I can feel it. On Mars, Dr. Hunyori made a decision. She would find the truth. She would travel to the archive station, a neutral library that held the knowledge of 1,000 worlds. If the council was hiding something, the answer would be there and on the moon. Lieutenant Beak Sora watched Ambassador Talek return to his office. He was still smiling, but when he thought no one was looking, his smile faded. His eyes became cold and hard. He looked like a predator watching its prey. Sora felt ice in her stomach. She did not know what the council was planning, but she knew, deep in her heart, humanity was in danger. The celebration continued across Earth. People laughed and sang, and dreamed of the stars. They did not know that the stars were watching back, and the stars were not friendly. The archive station floated in the darkness between stars. It was an ancient place, built long before the council existed. Every species in the galaxy had the right to store their knowledge there. Every species had the right to read what others had written. It was neutral ground. It's protected by old laws that even the council could not break. Dr. Han Yuri arrived on a small transport ship. She had told her supervisors she was taking a vacation. She had told no one where she was really going. The station was massive. Towers of crystal rose from a central sphere, each one holding millions of years of knowledge. Yuri felt very small as she walked through the entrance. An old alien sat at the welcome desk. His skin was blue, and his eyes were large and sad. His name was Maureen, and he had worked at the archive for 300 years. I need to access the council's species classification records, Yuri said. Maureen looked at her with surprise. Those files are restricted. Only council members can read them. Please, Yuri said. I think something terrible is happening. I think my people are in danger. Maureen was quiet for a long time. Then he leaned forward and spoke in a whisper. I have seen many species come to the archive. Some were happy, some were afraid. But I remember others. 13 others. They came asking the same questions you are asking. What happened to them? They are gone now. All of them. Extinct. Maureen's eyes were filled with pain. The council called it natural death, disease, war, accidents. But I know the truth. I saw the files before they were sealed. Yuri felt her heart beating fast. Will you help me? Maureen was silent again. Then, slowly, he nodded. Follow me. They walked through empty hallways and dark rooms. Finally, they reached a small door hidden behind a wall of old books. Maureen opened it with a key that hung around his neck. Read quickly, he said. If they find you here, I cannot protect you. Yuri stepped inside. The room was small, with only a single computer screen. She sat down and began to search. What she found made her blood turn cold. Humanity was not listed as a developing ally. They were not listed as a friend or a student or a partner. They were classified as threat level, Omega, the highest danger rating in the Council's system. Yuri read the reports with shaking hands. The Council had studied humanity for over 100 years before making contact. They had watched humans fight wars. They had watched humans invent weapons. They had watched humans adapt and survive and refuse to die, and they were afraid. Humans are uniquely dangerous, one report said. They are aggressive, creative, and unpredictable. They form bonds of loyalty that override logic. They will sacrifice themselves for strangers. They cannot be controlled through fear or pain. If allowed to develop freely, They will dominate the galaxy within 500 years. The council had created a plan. They called it the Containment Protocol. They would make contact with humanity. They would offer friendship and technology. But the technology would be old and weak. It would keep humans dependent on the council. It would slow their development. It would give the council time to study human weaknesses, and when humans became too strong to control, the council would destroy them. Yuri found the records of 13 other species. They had been given the same treatment. The council had smiled at them. The council had promised them friendship, and when the time was right, the council had killed them all. One species was poisoned through their water supply. Another was destroyed by a disease that appeared from nowhere. Another simply disappeared, every single member of their race gone in a single night. Yuri felt tears running down her face. She had believed in the council. She had trusted them. She had dedicated her life to working beside them, and they were planning to murder her entire species. She copied everything onto a small data chip. Then she ran, but she was not fast enough. Council security was waiting outside the archive. 4 soldiers in black armor surrounded her before she could reach her ship. Dr. Han Yuri, the leader said, "You are under arrest for accessing restricted information." Yuri's heart was pounding, but she did not panic. As the soldiers grabbed her arms, she pressed a hidden button on her wrist. The data chip in her pocket began to transmit across the galaxy. Admiral Kung Doan received a message. He was in his office when his computer beeped. He opened the message and saw Yuri's face on the screen. She looked scared, but her voice was steady. "Admiral, I found the truth. The Council is planning to destroy humanity. We are not their friends. We are their prisoners. They've done this before, to 13 other species. All of them are dead now. I am sending you everything. You must tell the President. You must warn everyone. I do not know if I will survive, but the truth must survive. Please, Admiral, save our people." The transmission ended. Then the files began to download. Kang Dahan read them with growing horror. Every word confirmed his worst fears. Every page revealed a new betrayal. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, children were playing in the street. Families were having dinner. People were living their normal lives, not knowing that their entire species was marked for death. "Not while I breathe," Kong whispered. He took the files to President Yoon Sara that night. They met in a secret room deep beneath the presidential palace. The president read the files in silence. When she finished, her face was pale. "This cannot be true," she said. "Believe it is," Kong replied. "But I understand your doubt. We need confirmation." "How?" "Lieutenant Beek Sora. She is inside the Council embassy. She can access their headquarters. She can find proof that cannot be denied." President Yoon was quiet for a long time. Then she straightened her back and lifted her chin. "Send her. But tell her to be careful. If the Council discovers what we know, they may attack before we are ready." Kong nodded. "I will contact her tonight." Far away, on the moon, Beek Sora received her orders. She read them twice to make sure she understood. Infiltrate Council headquarters. Find proof of the extermination plan. Return alive. She closed the message and looked out her window. The Council embassy glowed in the darkness, beautiful and peaceful. She knew now that it was all a lie. "I will find your truth," she whispered, "and I will bring it home." She began to prepare for the most dangerous mission of her life. And somewhere in the depths of Council space, Dr. Han Yuri sat alone in a prison cell, hoping that her message had reached someone who could save humanity. She did not know if she would ever see Earth again. But she knew that she had done her duty. The truth was free. Now it was up to others to act on it. Lieutenant Beek Sora moved through the shadows like a ghost. The Council's main quarters was a massive station orbiting a dead star. It was the center of galactic power, where the leaders of 100 worlds made their decisions. Security was everywhere. Cameras watched every corner. Guards patrolled every hallway. But Sora was very good at her job. She had traveled to the station disguised as a cleaning worker. Her face was covered with makeup that changed her features. Her uniform was stolen from a supply ship. For 3 days, she cleaned floors and emptied trash while studying the layout of the building. On the 4th night, she made her move. The records room was on the highest level of the station. Sora climbed through air vents, avoided motion sensors, and disabled security cameras. By midnight, she was standing in front of the Council's most secret files. Her fingers moved quickly across the computer terminal. She searched for anything related to Earth, to humanity, to the membership vote. What she found made her stop breathing. The membership vote had already happened. It had happened 3 months ago, in a secret session that no human had attended. But they had not voted on whether to accept humanity. They had voted on when to kill them. So read the document with growing horror. The Council had approved something called Protocol Omega. Within 5 years, they would release a plague designed specifically for human biology. It would spread through the air, through water, through touch. It would kill every human on Earth, Mars, the Moon, and every colony in between. No one would survive. Not the old. Not the young. Not the sick or the healthy. Everyone would die, and the galaxy would never know. The Council would tell other species that humanity had destroyed itself through war. They would shake their heads sadly and say that some species were simply too dangerous to live. Sora felt tears in her eyes. But she did not let them fall. She copied everything onto a hidden transmitter built into her tooth. Then she sent the signal to Earth. But she had made a mistake. The file transfer triggered a silent alarm. 30 seconds later, the door burst open. Council soldiers flooded into the room, their weapons aimed at her chest. Human spy. The commander shouted, "Surrender now." Sora did not surrender. She grabbed a chair and threw it at the first soldier. She dove under a table as gunfire filled the room. She kicked another soldier in the knee and stole his weapon. The fight was brutal. Sora was small and fast, but there were too many enemies. A bullet hit her shoulder. Another grazed her leg. She kept fighting. She reached an emergency hatch and threw herself inside. The hatch led to an escape pod. She launched it before the soldiers could stop her. The pod flew into space, spinning wildly. Sora was bleeding badly. Her vision was getting dark. But she had done her job. The transmission was complete. Earth would know the truth. 20 hours later, President Yunsera stood in the emergency chamber of the United Earth Government. Every leader on Earth was there, either in person or on screen. They had been called from their beds in the middle of the night. Admiral Kung Duan stood beside the president. His face was hard as stone. "What is this about?" the Prime Minister of India asked. "Why the emergency?" President Yoon did not answer with words. Instead, she played the files. For 1 hour, the leaders of Earth watched in silence. They saw the classification reports. They saw the extinction plans. They saw the records of 13 dead species. They heard the Council discuss how easy it would be to murder 8 billion humans. When the files ended, no one spoke. Then the president of Brazil stood up. His hands were shaking with rage. "Those monsters, those lying, murdering monsters," he smiled at us, the Chancellor of Germany said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They shook our hands. They promised us friendship. And they were planning to kill our children," the Prime Minister of Japan added. Admiral Kong stepped forward. "We have a choice to make. We can wait for them to strike first. We can try to negotiate. We can beg for mercy." His voice grew hard. "Or we can fight." President Yoon raised her hand for silence. "I have already made my decision, but this is too important for one person. We must vote." The vote was unanimous. Every nation, every leader, every voice said the same thing. War. That night, President Yoon Sira made a broadcast. It was transmitted on every frequency to every corner of the galaxy. Every species with a radio or a screen could hear her words. She stood in front of a simple blue background. The flag of Earth hung behind her. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "To the Galactic Council and all the peoples of the galaxy. My name is Yoon Sira, President of the United Earth Government. I speak for all of humanity. We know what you have done. We have seen your secret files. We know about the 13 species you murdered. We know about the plague you have designed for our children. You called us a threat. You planned our extinction because you feared what we might become. You were right to fear us, but you made one terrible mistake. You gave us time. You smiled at us while we built our strength. You lied to us while we learned your secrets. Humanity does not beg. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not forget. The Council has declared war on Earth through its deception. Earth now answers, we are coming. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in shock, and on Earth, something incredible happened. Old enemies embraced. Nations that had hated each other for centuries now stood together. Every factory, every shipyard, every laboratory began to work for a single purpose. Deep beneath the mountains of the world, hidden from Council sensors, massive doors began to open. Ships rose from secret bunkers, ships that no alien had ever seen. For 20 years, humanity had been building in secret, preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Admiral Kang Doan stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built. Armed with weapons reverse-engineered from alien technology, Captain Park Jinu stood beside him. The fleet is ready, Admiral. Kang looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was preparing to respond. The greatest war in human history was about to begin. Then let us begin, the Admiral said. Humanity has been patient long enough. Now we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten our home. The engines roared to life. The united fleet of Earth moved toward the darkness between stars, and the galaxy trembled. High Chancellor Vorin watched the human broadcast with cold eyes. Around him, the other Council leaders were shouting and arguing. Some were scared. Some were angry. All of them were surprised. How did they find out? General Krath demanded. He was a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like gray rock. He commanded the Council's military forces. Our security was perfect. Obviously it was not, Vorin replied. His voice was calm, but inside he was furious. The humans had been docile for so long. They had smiled and thanked the Council for every gift. They had seemed so grateful, so trusting. It had all been an act. We must strike now, Krath said. Before they can organize, before they can spread their lies to other species, agreed Vorin said. Take the combined fleet to Earth. Crush them quickly. Make an example of them so no other species will ever dream of resistance. Krath smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. It will be my pleasure. 3 weeks later, the combined fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. 200 warships, the largest force the Council had assembled in 1,000 years. General Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident of victory. The humans have maybe 50 ships, his aide reported. Old technology, weak weapons. This will not be a battle. It will be an execution. Krath laughed. Humanity was always too emotional, too proud. They should have accepted their death quietly. Instead, they choose to die screaming. It makes no difference to me. The fleet moved toward Neptune, the outer planet of the human system. Krath expected to find a small defense force easily destroyed. Instead, he found Admiral Kang Duan waiting for him. The human fleet emerged from behind Neptune's largest moon. 50 ships, just as the scouts had reported. But they were not the primitive vessels the Council expected. They were sleek, fast, and armed with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. What is this? Krath demanded. Those are not the ships we gave them. Sir, I am detecting weapon systems similar to our own, his aide said, fear creeping into his voice. They have plasma cannons, shield generators, even missile systems that match our latest designs. Krath felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had underestimated the humans. They had been learning. They had been building. They had been preparing for this moment for years. But he still had numbers on his side. For ships to every human vessel. Victory was still certain. Attack, he ordered. Destroy them all. The Battle of Neptune began. Captain Park Jinu stood at the tactical display aboard the Defiance. Around him, officers shouted orders and monitored screens. The enemy fleet was closing fast. "Admiral," he said to Kong Doan, "they are coming in a standard formation, predictable, overconfident." "As we expected," Kong replied. "Begin Operation Ghost." Jinu smiled. He had designed this plan himself. The Council expected humans to fight like every other species, following rules and patterns that had existed for millennia. Humans did not follow rules. The first wave of Council ships entered the engagement zone. Suddenly, the space around them exploded. Hidden mines, placed weeks ago by stealth drones, tore through their holes. 12 ships died in the first 30 seconds, before the Council could recover. Small human attack craft appeared from nowhere. They had been hiding in the asteroid field, waiting for this moment. They dove between the larger ships, targeting engines and weapon systems. They were too small to hit, too fast to catch, and then the human fleet attacked. The Defiance led the charge, its main cannon firing beams of blue light that cut through Council shields like paper. Around it, the other human ships formed a wedge, concentrating their fire on single targets. "Focus on their command ships," Kong ordered. "Cut off the head, and the body will die." General Krath watched in horror as his fleet fell apart. His ships were designed for orderly battles, for formations and strategies. The humans fought like wild animals, attacking from every direction, refusing to follow any pattern he could predict. Worse, something was happening to his crews. Across the fleet, he received reports of confusion and mutiny. The humans were broadcasting on all frequencies, showing the evidence of the Council's crimes to every soldier in the battle. "Your leaders lied to you," the broadcast said. "They murdered 13 species. They planned to murder us. You are not fighting for justice. You are fighting for tyrants. Put down your weapons. Save your own honor." Some crews ignored the messages, but others did not. On 7 Council ships, soldiers turned against their officers. They refused to fire on the humans. They demanded answers. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the space around Neptune was filled with debris. General Krath retreated with what remained of his fleet. He had lost 63 ships. The humans had lost 15. It was supposed to be an easy victory. Instead, it was the worst defeat in Council military history. On the Defiance, Admiral Kang Do-an allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. But he knew this was only the beginning. "They will return," he said. "With more ships, more soldiers. We cannot win a long war against the entire galaxy." Captain Jinu nodded. "What do we do?" "We need allies. And we need to strike at the heart of the Council before they can recover." Far across the galaxy, Dr. Han Yuri was escaping her prison. A group of aliens had attacked the facility where she was held. They called themselves the Free People's Coalition, species who had long suspected the Council's true nature. When they saw the evidence humanity had broadcast, they decided to act. Yuri was confused as they led her to their ship. "Why are you helping me?" Their leader, a tall being with feathers instead of hair, looked at her with something like respect. "Because you told the truth? Because humanity is fighting the battle we were too afraid to fight. You have given us hope." They flew her back to Earth, where she was welcomed as a hero. President Yoon Sera met her personally. "Dr. Han, your courage saved our species. Because of you, we had time to prepare. Because of you, we are still alive." Yuri shook her head. "Many people helped. Many sacrificed. I only did what was right." But she knew the war was not over. The Council would come again, stronger than before, and humanity could not defeat them alone. That night, Admiral Kong gathered his commanders. On the screen before them was an image of the Council capital, the great station at the center of civilized space. "This is our target," he said. "Not to destroy, but to expose. We will broadcast the truth to every corner of the galaxy. We will tear down the Council's lies and let every species decide for themselves what kind of future they want." Lieutenant Beak Sora, her wounds now healed, stepped forward. I will lead the infiltration team. I know their systems. I know their weaknesses. Kong nodded. Then we begin planning immediately. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, depends on what we do next. The stars waited in silence. The final battle was coming. The Council Capital was the largest structure in the known galaxy. It floated at the center of civilized space, a massive station where 1,000 species had gathered for 10,000 years. Here, laws were made. Here, wars were decided. Here, the fate of entire worlds was sealed with a single vote. And here, humanity would make its final stand. Admiral Kongdon stood on the bridge of the Defiance. Watching the station grow larger on the screen, behind him, the United Fleet of Earth followed in formation. 35 ships remained after the Battle of Neptune. They faced a defense force of nearly 200. "They are hailing us," Captain Park Jinyu reported. "High Chancellor Vorin wishes to negotiate." "No negotiations," Kong replied. "We came here for one reason. Begin Operation Sunrise." The plan was simple, but dangerous. Captain Jinyu would lead a diversionary attack, drawing the Council fleet away from the station. Admiral Kong would push through with the main force and protect the station until the mission was complete. And Lieutenant Beak Sora would lead a small team inside the station itself. Their target was the Central Broadcast Hub, a facility that could send messages to every corner of the galaxy at once. If Sora could reach it, she could show the truth to every species alive. The battle began. Jinu's squadron attacked from the left, firing on the Council's largest warships. The Council commanders, still embarrassed from their defeat at Neptune, took the bait. They turned to pursue, eager for revenge. Admiral Kong struck from the right. His ships punched through the weakened defense line, heading straight for the station. Council vessels tried to stop them, but human pilots were faster and more creative. They used asteroids for cover. They flew through debris fields that Council ships considered too dangerous. They refused to fight fairly. All ships protect the station. A Council commander screamed, "Do not let them dock." But it was too late. A small transport ship hidden among the human warships slipped past the battle and attached itself to the station's service port, inside the transport. Lieutenant Beak Sora checked her weapon one final time. Behind her stood 12 soldiers, the best Earth had to offer. And beside her stood Dr. Han Yuri, carrying a data chip that held the evidence of every crime the Council had committed. "Remember," Sora said, "we are not here to fight. We are here to reach the broadcast hub. Avoid combat when possible. Complete the mission at all costs." They opened the door and stepped into the station. The next 2 hours were the longest of Sora's life. They moved through service tunnels and emergency corridors, avoiding patrols and security systems. 3 times, they had to fight their way through checkpoints. Sora lost 4 soldiers, but they kept moving. Outside, the battle was turning desperate. Admiral Kong's fleet was surrounded. Ship after ship was destroyed. The Council had learned from their mistakes. They fought without mercy, but something strange was happening. Not all Council ships were fighting the humans. Across the fleet, crews were receiving the same messages that had turned soldiers at Neptune. They were seeing the evidence. They were learning the truth, and many of them were choosing to put down their weapons. "I will not fight for murderers," one alien captain declared on an open channel. He ordered his ship to stand down. Then another captain did the same. Then another. Civil war erupted within the Council fleet. Ships that had been attacking humans suddenly turned on each other. The defenders became divided, fighting themselves as much as the invaders. High Chancellor Vorin watched from his command center in horror. Everything was falling apart. His fleet was destroying itself. His secrets were spreading across the galaxy. And somewhere in his station, human soldiers were getting closer to the broadcast hub. "Stop them!" He screamed. "Find the infiltrators. Kill them all!" But it was too late. Sora's team reached the broadcast hub. The door was heavily guarded, but Sora had prepared for this. She threw a smoke grenade and charged through the confusion. Yuri stayed close behind her, protected by the remaining soldiers. The fight was brutal and quick. When it ended, Sora stood over the bodies of the council guards, breathing hard. Her arm was bleeding. Her leg was burned. But she was alive. Yuri, she said. Do it now. Dr. Han Yuri walked to the main console. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. She inserted the data chip and began uploading. Across the galaxy, screens flickered. Every species with technology saw the same thing. The evidence of the Council's crimes, the lists of murdered species, the plans to exterminate humanity. Everything. High Chancellor Voran tried to run. He made it to his private ship, hoping to escape before anyone could stop him. But when he reached the door, his own guards were waiting. You lied to us, one of them said. You made us into murderers. We took him prisoner. The battle ended not with a final explosion, but with silence. Council ships stopped firing. Human ships held their position. Everyone watched the broadcast, learning the truth together. When it was over, the galaxy was changed forever. In the following weeks, the Galactic Council collapsed. High Chancellor Voran was put on trial, along with every leader who had approved the extinction protocols. Many were sent to prison. Some took their own lives rather than face justice. A new organization rose from the ashes. They called themselves the Galactic Assembly, and they invited every species to participate. There would be no more secret votes, no more hidden crimes. Every decision would be made in the open, with the voice of every people heard. Humanity was offered a founding seat. President Yoon Sira accepted, but she made one thing clear in her final broadcast to the galaxy. We did not want war. We wanted to be your partners, your friends. You feared our potential for destruction, but you never saw our potential for loyalty, for sacrifice, for love. We fight hardest, not for conquest, but for those who cannot fight for themselves. Humanity offers its hand to any species willing to build a better galaxy. We remember our enemies, but we never abandon our friends. Admiral Kang Do-in retired to a small house in the mountains of Korea. He spent his days fishing and watching the sunrise. Sometimes young officers visited to ask for his advice. He always told them the same thing. Fight only when you must. But when you fight, never surrender. Dr. Han Yuri became the leader of the New Science Coalition, an organization dedicated to sharing technology freely with every species. She spent the rest of her life making sure no species would ever be left behind again. Lieutenant Beak Sora, now fully healed, was offered any position she wanted. She chose to become the first human ambassador to the Galactic Assembly. She spent her days building bridges between worlds, turning enemies into friends. Captain Park Ji-nu took command of the Defiance, which was rebuilt as a peacekeeping vessel. He traveled from star to star, helping species in need and protecting the weak from the strong and across the galaxy. Species that had been silent for centuries began to speak. They told stories of the small blue planet that had refused to die. They sang songs about the humans who had stood against tyranny when no one else would. They taught their children that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to do what was right even when afraid. Humanity had declared war, and in doing so, they had freed the galaxy. The stars no longer watched with cold, distant eyes. Now they shone with hope, and somewhere on Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and dreamed of the future. It was bright, it was beautiful, and it belonged to everyone.